For the most part, I really wouldn't recommend a secondary build on a Shikishima, or certainly not on a Yamato. But when Brad Pitt in the comments section asked about it, I figured I'd give it another shot. It is really not good on Yamato though. Those secondaries don't have the pen nor the reload that the Shikishima gets. We, of course, on the Shikishima get the huge benefit of Harugumo secondaries. Penning 30 millimeters of armor now, having pretty good reload and fire chance as well. Realistically though, they're not that great, and it comes down to their lack of accuracy. Unlike the German battleships and some of the American premium battleships, there's no inherent buff to the accuracy on these secondaries. So thanks to the secondary reworks that have happened in the past, this ship really has some horrible accuracy, at least until the buildup of that manual secondary targeting reaches its maximum. Even then, it's still not great. But with the volume of shells and hopefully the reasonable amount of pen and fires we can get, that's really the main focus of the Shikishima. And I'm running a mostly full secondary build. I'm even giving up some main gun accuracy, although I couldn't really tell in this video. I'll be honest, I got really lucky in this one. I have not seen my Shikishima play like this in a very long time. The amount of accuracy and huge hits we're going to get in this game is unbelievable. But first, we do have a Delny to worry about, and he's kind of just rushing our daring. So myself and this Massachusetts open up with our secondaries and main guns. And yeah, 3 hits out of the main guns, that's enough for 5,000 damage. That certainly hurts. So even though there's only 6 guns on this thing, they each do a ton of damage. And of course, the overmatch certainly helps out as well, as we're going to see there's some squishy battleships, at least when it comes to their armor. Amagi, 32 millimeters of armor everywhere. However, this guy's just giving us flat broadside. We'll just go ahead and say hello. Now, you might notice something that is a little different about these videos here more recently. I actually don't have any mods installed right now, as we barely land those short. I think the Amagi turned out just as we shot. So our aim would have been perfect had he not maneuvered, but of course, it's well within what an enemy should be doing to maneuver. But I uninstalled my mods. I decided to try this game back again without some of the suggested, I would say, aiming helpful mods, like the dynamic crosshair, upgrading my mini-map to something that can go a little bit bigger, and it seemed to work out okay. And the main reason, though, I have to say, with my tinfoil hat firmly planted on my head, I was wondering if any sort of mods on the game would actually be the cause of worse dispersion. I know. Tinfoil hat is firmly on my head while saying that, but based on this one game, I think it worked. Or it's just that I'm noticing the good dispersion right now. Or I got lucky. But here is an example salvo. Have you ever seen Shikishima do that with a secondary build? Yeah, I don't think a secondary build Shikishima does that most of the time. So this poor Amagi gets absolutely crushed. Of course, even if he angled, our overmatch is going to go right through him anyway. We only have 4 secondary hits so far. This secondary build Shikishima isn't making too much use of the secondaries, but we're pushing in now. We're trying to at least take over the A flank. It's really important to at least gain control of one side of this map. Preferably, it's gonna be this A flank, I think, down, and that really comes down to the ability to defend A from really strong positions. Although, now that I'm looking at it, maybe it's better from the C flank. Regardless, there's a lot of islands on this map that run north-south, so that means that it kind of cuts the map in half or thirds or quarters, depending on which ones you look at. So getting control of some of these quarters or halves of the map is really important as we go into the mid and late game. This is why I'm pushing towards these north-south islands, towards the middle of the map, and trying to focus out the remaining enemy players on this side. We need to free up this flank so we can go deal with the enemy's push through C. There's plenty of ships that haven't been spotted in quite some time on the enemy team out at the sea flank. So we really do need to go in and help support them while trying to, again, free up this flank. Because leaving people on our broadside is a pretty bad idea. We haven't been shot at too much this game, so I do have a lot of health remaining, but I do take some pretty big risks here in just essentially going flat broadside to a Izumo and a Petro, both of which have enough pen to citadel me at these ranges. So taking a little bit of luck here and hoping that we don't get citadeled too badly, as we're really trying to get to these islands to help prevent the enemy team from getting a really strong hold on the B cap. It's very difficult to retake B once you've lost it and lost the surrounding islands, which is why I'm pushing so recklessly with my large HP pool remaining. Got tons of healing left, so I'm okay with taking some damage. But you're gonna notice we have a danger smoke that's coming right at us. I thought this was a destroyer that was just smoking up in the cap, but this smoke is coming at us pretty darn quickly. And actually, it turns out there's an Italian cruiser on the enemy team, which means that we gotta watch out for some torpedoes. Fortunately, that was not a Paulo Emilio. Otherwise, I would have been dead. So this Brindisi does take us by surprise, and the biggest weakness shows up in these secondary build Shikishima. The turrets are just too slow. It's one of the main issues with brawling in these Japanese battleships. The turrets turn so slowly. And of course, that means you want to turn the ship to help the turrets turn. You're going to notice me do that quite a bit as we're getting into the more brawly part of this match. I'm going to turn my ship to turn the turrets as much as I can. But that also reveals a massive weakness in the cheek on the Shikishima and the Yamato. If you didn't know, I'll talk about it later when we go over the build in port, but there are sections of the citadel that are angled perfectly so that it's very easy to citadel this thing even at a 30-degree angle. You don't even need 32 millimeters of overmatch to do this, but if you're facing another ship with 32 millimeters of overmatch, oh boy, look out. You better go straight bow in or straight stern in. That's the best way to mitigate the damage, and even then, it's going to be difficult to not get citadeled in these ships. It's really down to our random chance and dispersion when it comes to close range 32 millimeter overmatch fights in a Shikishima. The overmatch, of course, is incredibly powerful, as you can see. Angled Harlem, yeah, he's not going to be bouncing any of those shells, and we take a huge chunk off of him. And a Schlieffen is popping out. I kind of wish I had saved my shot, but one of the saving graces of the Shikishima is the faster reload. You get a much quicker reload than the Yamato, and when dispersion cooperates, we can devastating strike that Schlieffen and hopefully kill him before those torpedoes get launched. That's why I'm going to continue to reverse here. I'm going to try and get out of the way of these torps. However, looking at it, if he had had his torpedoes sent, I think I would have ate a bunch of torps anyway. Fortunately, we killed him before he got the torpedoes launched, so we get a little bit lucky there, especially since his main guns weren't looking either, since you could very easily get dev struck at that kind of range, even from a Schlieffen. Nearly taking out the Harlem. There's a lot of citadels this game for a secondary build Shikishima. I gotta be honest with you, it makes a lot more sense to build a Shikishima for the main guns and tanking and being a mid-range battleship rather than a brawling one. But it can work either way. It's just a very strong ship still. I don't think I'd recommend this ship, for those of you wondering, over the Bourgogne. I think Bourgogne is just a better, more unique, fun, flexible experience for the steel price. It's very expensive and takes a long time to get that much steel, of course. I don't know if a Yamato clone with a few different characteristics is the best use of the steel. It's not a bad ship, though. That is very clear. We've done a ton of damage this game, and, well, we're on 3 kills already. A Kraken in the cards, perhaps? We'll have to see. But there is a Harugumo spamming our poor Iowa from in the smoke, so I'm trying to not get in our Iowa's way from reversing, since I know what it's like to try and get away from that kind of HE spam. When a teammate blocks you, that's really not the funnest experience ever. Of course, we should have expected the Harugumo torps, so I'm turning right into them. And here, I decide to continue turning into these torps just to get the guns on target. I'm constantly using my rudder to maneuver my turrets. That's really important with these battleships, the Yamato and Shikishima, Musashi too. It's getting yourself into positions where you can afford to show broadside a little bit more often, and that really does help deal with this turret traverse, which is why, again, this ship really likes to play in the mid-range, mid to long range, since it allows you to go flat broadside and maneuver to get these guns on target a little bit quicker without risking full citadels. Although, against a Harlem, it's really not that big of an issue to go flat broadside. It's not possible for Harlem to citadel us, at least at this range. And the secondaries actually come in clutch, getting us our Kraken unleashed. So I'm pretty happy with the result of this game. However, I think it probably would have happened much the same without the secondary build. And since I didn't really get shot at too much this game, the lack of tankiness and the, well, worse concealment really is what I've given up here to get a secondary build. It's not really been too much of an issue in this game. It can certainly become an issue in more open games or where you're getting focused down and want to go dark, that kind of thing. Unfortunately though, no 6th kill for us, but still a 267,000 damage game with 5 kills in a Shikishima secondary build. That's not something I would have guessed that I would have had. And in fact, this was like the first match I played in the Shikishima. I saw the comment from the totally real and legit YouTube account of Brad Pitt, and I thought I would give it a go. And it turns out the first match went really well. It's possible I've been wrong this whole time about Shikishima, and it's much better than I think. But these 6-gun battleships tend to live and die by their random dispersion, and in a match like this one, it seemed to work out pretty well. As for the cheek I was just talking about, well, here it is. It's pretty rough and very easy to hit for any battleship at close range, even those cruisers. There's a lot of issues with brawling in the Shikishima, and this really is the primary reason. At an angle like this, you just aim under the front turret, you're probably going to get citadeled. It's a big issue, especially with the secondary build, since you basically have to show that much broadside, enough to get cheeked and citadeled to actually make use of the Harugumo turrets. They are very good and quite powerful secondaries, assuming they're hitting, but you gotta show enough broadside to actually make use of them, which is a bit of a downside. So the secondary build, perhaps not recommended, but it certainly can work. What I've decided to run looks a little like this, trying to maximize the fire output of the secondaries. I think it's really necessary to run grease the gears on these Japanese battleships at high tier. They just really have poor turret traverse. It's rough. I'd probably go with basic survivability, and then of course the secondary build along with fire prevention and extra healing. This is kind of a bit of a standard secondary build that I've decided that I like right now, at least for the 3 and 4 point skills. The first 2 can kind of maneuver around depending on what ship it is. And Ohio, for example, doesn't really need the extra turret traverse, and maybe would benefit from vigilance a little bit more, that kind of thing. It's really flexible for those first 2, but these last few, I think I really like this build right now for the brawling battleships. As far as equipment is concerned, it's got to be aiming systems on Shikishima. It's just better. But if you want to run the meme secondary build, it can do some work too, as you can see. I think that Shikishima can be a lot of fun, as shown in this game, but you can't really expect this level of dispersion every time. It's certainly a bit of a dice roll. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.